right now on Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks. I was just saying, Cynthia, to the folks on Facebook and Instagram, spontaneity is truly the spice of life. Because I've got to tell you, I'm on the phone with Lori. I got Cynthia Sue Larson here, and I'm talking to the journeyers, and I'm saying, I didn't even know StreamYard existed 2 days ago. And look at us here. I am so thrilled. I want to send a shout out to StreamYard immediately. Welcome, everybody, to Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks live, our very first live with a guest. Thank you, StreamYard. You're awesome. Welcome, Cynthia. We've just been yapping, and I'm watching the clock going, time to go. Let's do this.
Good to see you. Oh, doing great. Thank you. Although it's been kind of a bumpy ride energy-wise lately, as most people that are sensitive would acknowledge. So,
right.
Yeah.
We were just talking about that off air. And I have to say, so a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about a spiritual, I'm not going to say meltdown, I'm going to say spiritual emergency, also known as spiritual emergence. But it's been emotionally pretty heavy lately. Yeah. So what are you thinking? And I'm looking at.
Well, we've got lots of things going on. The factors including, of course, I love to discuss Dr. Carl Kalleman's research. He's the Swedish physicist who has noticed that as of October 28th, 2011, we really went into this ninth wave where every 2 weeks the energies are changing. And you can actually see this historically. You can look at, like, there was the March on Washington, and just ever since end of 2011, there's been a lot happening. And so we're in the thick of it right now. Like, sometimes it takes a while till a pattern really, it's like music or anything else. Like, now we can really feel it, and it's just vibrating like crazy. So there seems like a lot of chaos, a lot of interference. But as always, love is the coherence that holds us together and that helps us stay on track with where we're really going and what we actually care about, regardless what it looks like.
You said, let's see if I hope I wrote this down, something about love stops all interference. Am I right? Love stops all interference. Yes, we're going through a lot of interference. And I want to dive right into this, Cindy. Okay, journeyers, you get to know a little secret. I call her Cindy. She looks like a Cindy. Cindy. We're going to dive right into this interference. I think that's a good segue because we are going through what appears to be an exorbitant amount of interference, an exorbitant amount of shifting, changing, the good, the bad, the indifferent, it's all there. And I know you just mentioned 2011, but this is a whole new or different layer of intensity that I don't know that anyone on this planet has ever seen before.
Right.
But we've been talking about this for months. I've been pretty close to sticking pretty tight to the topic here. And I think I probably will for the foreseeable future. But within the context of Mandela effects, this is what we're going to get right into. I know that's why some of you here, in fact, I want to send a shout out, Montreal, 11, welcome back. I remember you from 2 weeks ago. Welcome back, Daz, Doreen. Welcome, everyone. Jean, so happy to see you all here. We're talking Mandela effects, Cynthia, and as I have said to the journeyers, and I have been fairly public about since the beginning of all of this, in the midst of the madness is magic. And to me, that magic has a metaphysical potency that's going along with it. All things that we consider to be metaphysical, some say paranormal, I don't like that word, metanormal, let's just say, including Mandela effects. And so I have been, for every guest that I have, that researchers in this area of what Linda Moulton Howe calls high strangeness, I have been posing the question, how are you experiencing these sorts of things within this very, very potent period of time? Has anything shifted? Has it accelerated?
Oh, gosh.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, for me, it's been exciting because I've been researching, you know me, I've been researching reality shifts, which is now definitely the Mandela effect is the term that I first heard Art Bell use to describe it back in 2001, April of 2001. Yeah. So when people say Fiona Broome coined it, she popularized it. Right. Because by that time in 2010, people were ready for it. But Art Bell, really, I'd like to give him credit. He said it on air. It's recorded. He says, would you call this? He was talking to me. Cynthia, would you call this the Mandela effect? And he's talking about Nelson Mandela having died in prison, and then people noticed he's alive. He never died in prison. Why do we remember that? So I personally, in the last, we've had a conference that happened in June.
I want to talk about that, the IMEC. We're going
Yeah.
to get to that. We're going to get to that. Yeah.
So I'm going to cover the news since the conference, like what happened after the conference. And for me personally, I found 2 more researchers that never existed that in my sphere of knowledge. And it's like they popped into existence. This is another kind of Mandela effect where it's not just that dead people are alive again. Sometimes you'll see someone and you know for sure you would have heard of this researcher. And in my case, 2 of them. Mary Rose Barrington, she's no longer with us. She was in her 90s and passed away a few years ago, but she went to the University of Oxford, and she studied, she was the president of the Society for Psychical Research.
Yes, I'm familiar.
Okay, but I didn't know that she had a whole genre of ideas all about reality shifts. No one told me about it. In all the 20 years I've been doing this, no one mentioned it. Maybe she existed for others, but she's new to me. So she now... There's a book where she wrote about just one of those things, JOT, which is basically, it's reality shifts, but it's not on the scale of the Mandela effects we know, but I love it because it gives us hundreds of years of historical background to draw from. So no longer can people say, well, this thing just started recently, right when they fired up CERN, then stuff started getting weird. Like, no, it's been around a long time. And now we've also got a second researcher. I said there were 2 of them. And there's a Dr. Tony Jinks from the Western Sydney University. So he's in Australia, and he's a neuroscientist. So both, I mean, I had never heard of this, either of them. And now there are 2 of them that are associated with universities. They have a similar kind of wording system that very similar to what I've came together and put together 20 years ago. They were documenting cases similarly to the way that I do it. And I've got 20 years of online documented histories. So for me, this was epic in terms of my sphere of, what Mandela effects affect me. This is big, and I love it, and it's very good.
I think you're discovering those 2 individuals may be a little Mandela effect in and of itself. One minute they're not there, and the next they are. Seriously.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's for me. Yeah, for me it is.
When you really think about these scenarios, there may be other aspects of the Mandela effect that we're not even really recognizing.
Right.
In that regard, I want to get to an article that I just found, Cynthia, on healthline.com. Interestingly, I think it was published in March of this year. I want to read, and it's going to be one of those articles, Healthline of all magazines, I guess you could say, and it's called The Mandela Effect, How False Memories Occur. I'm going to read this to you, and I'm going to ask you if you would just maybe give an answer to what they have to say. It's actually a bit deplorable in the way they wrote it, but I'm just going to read the beginning of the article and the very end. So it starts out by saying, film producer Robert Evans famously said, "There are 3 sides to every story: your side, my side, and the truth." Evans had it right in some respects, as people can mistakenly create false or pseudo memories. This is the case for the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect occurs when a large group of people believe an event occurred when it did not. There are many examples of the Mandela effect in popular culture. This article will explore why and how these false memories occur. I did not go through it. It's relatively short, but I'm going to get to the bottom line. It says, bottom line, the Mandela effect is an unusual phenomenon where a large group of people remember something differently than how it occurred. Conspiracy theorists believe this is proof of an alternate universe, while many doctors use it as an illustration of how imperfect memory can be sometimes. End quote.
Right.
Your response?
Well, I told you I've got a wild card that I'm going to bring up another doctor, but I'm going to go back now to, I just mentioned Tony Jinks. He's a neuroscientist. He specifically, when he wrote his book, which is all about disappearing object phenomena, because he's a neuroscientist, guess what? Good news for us. He actually has determined that the people that experience the Mandela effect, basically, are no different than those who do not in terms of the way their memory works. But yet they are seeing things that in such a way that they'll acknowledge, for example, our kidneys have moved. You and I have talked about that one.
Yes. Yes.
And that's huge. This is not simply yours, mine, and the truth.
Talk about that, Cynthia. Sorry to interrupt. for the folks that maybe were not on the last conversation we had, I believe it was the last interview we did, and I think there's a link in the description. But can you explain? We're talking about bodily organs being moved. You may
Absolutely.
be saying, huh? Explain, please.
Okay. So with the Mandela effect, because there's this so-called, I'll use the term that they're using. What do they call it? Memory distortion. Okay, that's fine. It's not too loaded a word, so I'm okay with it. So you might recognize, like, I have a memory, but it's different than what we now know the truth to be. Because if you ask yourself right now, where are my kidneys? And you didn't happen to hear this previous conversation that you and I had, Alexis, people can put their hands right over to protect your kidneys right now. If you're doing what I'm doing, your hands are now kind of where you'd rest them if you've hiked up a big hill and you just need to take a break for a minute. They're back in your lower back area. And we know this also if you do martial arts like I do. If you follow boxing, you know what a kidney punch is and why not to do it. It's hitting that same lower back area, and it's considered very dangerous because you could conceivably damage the kidneys to the point that the individual that's been struck might start urinating blood, and that would be a bad sign because then you know they could die very soon. So a lot of us remember all these little details. And then the reason I'm mentioning it is if you look it up now, you'll see the kidneys are no longer and never have been located where we remember the kidney punch, where we cover our kidneys. It doesn't make sense anymore. All of that has moved. So the kidneys are now up, up, up under the relative safety of the rib cage. People going to see a doctor for a kidney checkup usually now apparently are approached from the front side, not the back side. I have talked to an individual. She was shocked because she had always remembered she'd gone to see her doctor for her annual kidney review. She had a kidney issue, and they would always look at her. They'd say, lie down on your stomach on the table. This time they said, lie down on your back. She said, my back? Why? And she was very confused. Like, why are we doing it differently now? And that was a few years ago. So a lot of people have noticed this, but with the Mandela effect, people notice these things at different times, really showing us that there appear to be bubbles of reality. So
I was going to ask a question next. That's another a newbie for me, journeyers. I had a wonderful conversation with Cynthia just a day or two ago, and you brought up the term bubble reality. Why don't you explain that? And you know what? If anyone has heard that term before, give me a thumbs up because I had never heard it before. What is bubble reality?
I like to think of it in a quantum physics term as subjective observation. So I like to immediately map it onto something that we can see in quantum physics because it gives us another viewpoint, if you will. And what we've seen we've talked about this too, I believe, in a past discussion, that we now know for sure that in the realm of quantum physics, there is no such thing as some objective reality. There is no third truth that's true for everyone in the room. That little myth has been busted by quantum physics laboratory tests, which were reported on last year in 2019 from work done in 2018 at the University of Edinburgh, Scotland was working in conjunction with Vienna, Austria. That's it. So there was a collaborative effort, and they really did a great job showing that these two observational devices that are equally trustworthy are not, you would expect that if there was such a thing as the third truth, and it's true for all of us. That's when classical science has stomped on quantum physics and said that's the way it is, we're going to have our classical view no matter what, we are king. But that's not the way it is. And actually, it really strongly supports the fact that when you've got two observational devices giving two different reports at the same place, same time, then you no longer have an objective reality. You've got bubbles of reality. And that's what it's looking like. That's not a term used in that science report, but that is, for those of us who experience reality shifts and the Mandela effect, we are pretty certain, a lot of us, myself included, that we're not just misremembering. This is far beyond that. Of course, we can misremember. So you need to factor that out. But
large groups of people misremembering.
The kidneys, what's with that? Why would we do that? What on earth would possess us to be so afraid to get hit with a kidney punch? And now it's not an issue. So there's absolutely something going on.
I recall we've had so many interviews at this point, maybe 2 shows ago, you brought up what's now famously known as what was in the Bible, when the lion lays down with the lamb, of which many, not only devotees of Christianity know, but clergy themselves. And invariably, it's different. I went to my mother's old Bible, and it does not say the lion lays down with the lamb. What does it say?
The wolf. So it's now always been the wolf.
How do we explain that? Now, I know journeyers, we're supposed to be talking about some new discoveries, but I think it's good to really get into just going over just the phenomenological aspect of this in general will never get old to me. How do you explain that? I mean, that had probably for me, out of all of the Mandela effects that I am aware of, that one floored me the most. I purposely went to an old Bible that my grandfather gave to my mother when she was a teenager. And lo and behold, it says, when the wolf lays down with the lamb. What is happening?
Well,
now you've answered it
yeah,
before, but I don't know how many different ways I can ask the question because it's that perplexing.
Well, that's the good thing. It's supposed to invite us. I think the phenomenon itself is an invitation to ask us why. Like, why is this happening? We're supposed to pay attention. It's supposed to be the alarm clock waking us up to recognizing something is going on. So pay attention. And I personally don't believe in succumbing to fear. Remember, that's the noise, that's the interference. We want to go to love, which is the coherence. Bring it together. So if you look at the love in that message, it's now the wolf and has always been the wolf. But we remember a lion. See, that's what's cool. When you remember something, it's like there's something beautiful about our memory, our collective shared memory, which is not simply delusional. To me, it's bringing up a new form of playfulness with the universe. So illusion is just a word for playing and creating through play. And so we talk about illusion and delusion, but I'd rather go into really verlusion, truth, playing with truth and bringing it into a new form of reality. And that's what we're doing with the Mandela effect. It's noticing, okay, so maybe collectively I don't know, you can look around and point fingers and blame people for doing this, but I know, and I think most of us on your channel know, that does that ever really work? Can we ever really point our fingers and say they did this to us? It sort of seems to work for a little while, but if you're on a spiritual journey, and most of us that are journeyers with you are on a spiritual journey, then hopefully we're recognizing if there's going to be some power, the powers that be, it's going to be something greater than anything that would cause trouble or harm to us, that it's bringing us playfully into a new appreciation of reality. And if that's happening, then it gets exciting, because then what's the message of the wolf? What's it showing us? And
interesting. That's an interesting spin on it. I want to go back a little bit to something that you said, Cynthia, about, as an example, when the lion or the wolf lays down with the lamb, and I'm getting confused. You said it's always been that way. But here's this is a way I've sort of looked at the Mandela effect as a possibility. Was it always that way? And somehow, particularly within the context of a holographic model, it changed, including the print on a page. Now that, looking at memory and having a collective different memory than something that actually was is one aspect of the anomaly. But there's another that I think I'd love to know if you've explored, and that is, could the reality have changed? That at one point
yes.
it did say,
in
when
sense,
the lion...
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we're noticing that it changed. What I'm suggesting, and what my work has been suggesting through my books, Reality Shifts and Quantum Jumps, I leave it open to people making their own decision. But what I am actually showing, that what it looks like to me is that we, in the form of consciousness, are making these jumps to various physical realities. Those are levels of vibration. You have to recognize everything in reality is vibration. We agree on that. Yeah, we know that. Everything is interconnected. And everything's in a process of change. So when you've got these three factors playing into, it's like it's all in play now. It looks to me a lot like we're in some kind of a holographic multiverse. And I know those two theories don't usually go together, but to me, they kind of have to, because...
I think they do. I absolutely do. Sure. Yeah.
Well, David Bohm was a great, brilliant physicist who came up with the holographic universe concept. And that would mean everything is connected and everything's in process, in flow. And the indigenous people around the world recognize that when they have languages that are verb-based. We have a problem in our Western English language because we put things in nouns.
Yes.
We think we can understand. Let's review our 3 points again. Everything is what? It's vibration. Everything's interconnected. Everything's changing. If you try to noun this into an understanding, you're going to fail every time. You're going to end up feeling like, what's going on here? But if you use verbs, and that's the key that David Bohm was looking at toward the end of his life, doing dialogues with Indigenous Native people, some of which I attended when they opened up to the public. It was a great experience. But that's that. Then you recognize we can see the world totally differently, and when you see it through these Indigenous eyes, and that's every continent. That's like all of the First Nations people that really, and some of them are quite deep. Like they would know about extraterrestrial truths. They would know about other
Sure.
star systems. Yeah. So these are not backwards people. And in addition to knowing about these these things that there's no way they should have known, they definitely knew that we're connected. We're changing. Everything's changing. These miracles happen. I think they were observing the bubble realities, and that's what the shamans would work with. Yeah, that's my take on it. Yeah.
Reality is a process, not a noun. I knew that's where you were going. I think that's a very powerful thing. Look, everyone, this is a postulate, like you said, that is, to me, perennial wisdom, that which the ancient civilizations, our elders, our ancestors, the indigenous people have known and have lived by for years, and yet we have become so divorced from it. Not all, but too many. I hope and pray that your work and others like you in this area will help to bring us back to a space of remembering, rejoining that perennial wisdom. So
Yes.
it's very important. I think I'm going to say it again like a broken record. I feel that now what we're going through, as tumultuous as it seems, I'm liking it to the birth canal being very painful to come through. We're literally being rebirthed, reborn, forgive the cliche, painful. But once we're reborn into a new form of self, perhaps the very things that we're talking about will have recognition, the rewords about. So let's talk about IMEC for all y'all out there. IMEC is the International Mandela Effect Conference in its second year? Just finished second?
It's literally in its first year because we didn't really get. Yeah, we met last year, but we got along so well, and there was like an egoless level of participation and cooperation. That's what we need for this this era in human's history. We can no longer be fixated on like my message and I'm the big poobah or something.
So tell us about IMEC, and it happened a couple of weeks ago. We'll make sure to have a link because you can still go to the website and look into it. But just to show you how formidable this subject has become, Journeyers, a conference with academicians, the likes of which you've never seen, participated. Tell us about how that went and what it was. What was presented?
Okay, well, this conference, it started, we had the foundational members from last year. So we had Christopher Anatra, the quantum businessman. We had our MC was Jerry Darkwolf Hicks. We also had Shane of Unbiased and On the Fence YouTube channel, Shane Robinson, and Kimberly Lynn Hansen, a Canadian artist who comes and just brings her way of living and being to demonstrate the Mandela effect. So all of that happened. In addition, we had this year, now that we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, Regina Meredith was our keynote speaker, and she was brilliant. She brings such heart, love, and intelligence and such wisdom, with humility. So she set the right tone. And then we started the conference off on day one of 6 days with Akranos Mago, who was able to bring gifts and monetary prizes for recipients of who engaged in the free app that he has. It's called ThetaStream.app, and basically it gives people the chance to test their own psychic and intuitive abilities. Great. Yeah. And it's you can just go into a meditation, watch your numbers bubble off the chart. And I did that, and I was like, whoa, I didn't mean to win a prize. let me get out of this. But it was so cool to try it out.
So tell me, what was, I really wanted, and I was actually, Higher Journeys was a sponsor, and unfortunately I wasn't able to, it was a virtual conference this year because of the new landscape, but I wasn't able to really participate in the way I'd like to, other than the banner being there and supporting it. But we're talking about a conference that brought in quite a few well-read individuals in this area. What would you say was the most, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot, most revelatory or powerful or even new thing as it relates to Mandela effects to be proffered?
I mean, I'd give prizes in different categories. I think in terms of a Mandela effect occurred in this talk, that would be Shane Robinson. He wins that one. And he gave a talk where he was showing the love map he had created in the last conference in Idaho. It had already changed between November 2019 and June 2020. So even when he's pointing at, look, it's changed, what he's pointing at, it's even changed yet again. So I think that totally like wins, like Mandela effect occurred in this talk. So that was awesome, epic. I'm really impressed with. We had a speaker this year that we didn't have last year, and this is Moneybag73 from the YouTube channel. You might know him. So if you know him that way, yeah, Evan Maitreya, right?
Yeah.
And he does a monthly Mandela Effect show with AJ on Rip and Rabbit, one of our other sponsors. So when Evan talked, he talked about the work of Dr. Carl Kalaman, and he talked about how what's really going on in the times and why the Mandela Effect is something that the ancients did expect. This is not an unexpected chaos. It's something that was basically, spoken about in advance, and it was known that the nature of, what would be coming would be a new way of seeing things. And then he also presented some of the work of Dr. Carl Kalaman. So I think that really was that would suit the people who are hardcore Mandela Effect fans that just they're just like, hit me with the new ones, hit me with the new ones.
Well, speaking of, I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm looking at the chat because I know we're going to have to get to questions. Someone
yes, we should.
Actually asking that question right now. This is Daz who's asking, can we have some newer examples of the Mandela Effect? Do you have any?
My thing is, I basically, I track a lot of different things. So, and I've been tracking it for 20 years. So for me, it's not, I think when we focus on that, you don't want to get too distracted by that. Now I sound like the Tibetan Buddhists that say that, for the last thousands of years, they say, don't get distracted by shiny. It's fun. And you can do it a little bit, but you don't want to get stuck there because, there's kind of a downside. So in terms of new, I told you what was new for me, but I think the ones that people are still looking at would be, and it's hard to know when they really catch hold. Remember, with the Mandela Effect, some people say, like, I saw that one years ago. And then that you get people getting in fights and scuffles, like, I saw that first. No, you didn't. And, what's the point? And then sometimes their videos vanish. And it's like, I did report that. Now it's gone. You got to believe me. So it's a lot of crazy comes in when you start saying, like, what is new? So now that I've deflated that.
I think the kidney story is relatively new. Daz, I don't know, had you heard that before? Has anyone, hands up again or thumbs up if you had heard that somehow, some way we have been anatomically changed or we have a memory of being different? That's one of the newer ones for me. I'll add one, actually.
Okay.
It's not necessarily that new. This may have been a year ago. I have had at least, I want to say, several people swear that I interviewed Joe Dispenza. Joe, if you're listening, you know what that means. Wink. But it's true. And we're even able to quote some of the things that we talked about. I said, no, it's not me. Yes, I know it was you. You interviewed Joe Dispenza, to the point where it got me thinking, now I know I'm not that old where my memory is going, but no, I have not. So there's one. Isn't that interesting?
And that's a great one to ask people watching right now, because they could put that in the chat. They could.
Yeah, well, you're listening, guys. Let me know. Have you heard me interview Joe Dispenza? And if you say yes, the answer, what's really happening is that you're time jumping, because that's going to happen in the future.
That's the key. Yeah, that's what we're doing. And that's the real new technology that's happening here. So the kind of reports that I've been getting, that I tend to get through my newsletter, are much more personal Mandela effects. And those are the ones that really convince people that this is real. Because I think more than anything, it's when it happens to you and you're like, no, wait a minute. I know this. I know this person was dead. My aunt told me. Now they're alive again. That kind of thing is just mind blowing. Or for me, a knob on a dial worked differently. Those personal Mandela effects, I think, are quite riveting, as are flip-flops, where you'll see it go one way and then the other. Like Costco, I did see Costco, the business without the T. I remember seeing that and thinking, why are they spelling it badly? Like, I don't know. I didn't really get a chance to fix. I was busy. I was like running around like, why is everyone spelling it Costco? What is this? And then next time I looked, it's back to Costco with the T, so as if nothing had ever happened. This happens a lot. And so for me, that one happened a few years ago. These are noticed by people at different times too. So what might be new for one person is not new for another. But
Some
those big ones, they include logos. Their historical events can be affected. Something new to me was I recently heard someone had three. There were like three groups of people remembering what happened with the tank man at Tiananmen Square in China. One group of people said, "Well, the tank man, he's carrying his bag of groceries. He's marching. He's standing in front of this line of tanks, and they stop. They slow down. They stop, and then he climbs up on the tank, and the hatch opens." And one person said, "This is AJ on the Rip on Rabbit show." He said he remembers that there was a hug, and a lot of people said they too remembered. Yeah, there was a hug. Some people remember the tank man got run over. And then it's like, scene missing. We can't show this on TV. It's like, well, that's what happened in China when you dare to protest. This is a very ancient scene, historical kind of Mandela effect.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a third group that remembers what now apparently has always been true, that tank man climbs up on the tank, the hatch opens, they wave at each other, and that's it. So it's like three different endings to this scenario. And that definitely, if you remember one of those three that's not waving, then your Mandela effect affected right there. So that's new to me, in the last week or two. I hadn't heard that. I hadn't heard there were three different possible endings on that one.
Yeah.
Oh, and I've got another big one.
Here we go. We're on a roll now.
Okay. Well, that one reminded me of another one because Moneybags, I want to credit him with this. He brought up, this is Evan Maitreya. He said, "Do you remember on Easter Island those big tall statues, right?
Mm-hmm.
The big guys. Do you remember what they looked like? How much of them is showing? What's showing? You remember. So what do you remember showing?"
Oh, you're asking me?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
And people can type it in chat right now.
Yeah, let's ask the journeyers. Why don't you repeat that just in case?
So Easter Island is famous for some gigantic
I wish I could put image up.
Sculpture carvings. Yeah.
Yeah. You all know what it is. Yeah.
You know what it is? It's that that mystery of where did these come from and what are they doing there? Right. And they're all kind of facing the same direction. You remember that you can see their faces. What else do you remember seeing? How much is showing? What is showing? Okay, so everyone's got a chance to think about it. I'm going to put it
to the journeyers. I'm not even going to. Come on. From the chest. Okay, so Kathy is saying from the chest up or just the head? I guess that's a question.
From that's what they remember. Like you're remembering the chest and the head, kind of shoulders and head kind of thing. Yeah, that's what I remember. Do you remember? Okay, now I'm going to give.
I remember. I'm thinking landscape, water.
Okay, but do you remember anything about what's in the statue itself? Because I'll say one more thing. And
it's very elongated faces, and no, I'm going to be frank. I'm kind of. I can see it generally. I see them lined up, and they're very elongated faces and facing a certain direction in all together. But other than that, come on, Journey, just the head. Okay,
yeah,
so
that's good. Those are good answers.
Anything? Ward is saying the whole body.
That's been recently discovered. But what I'm getting at is there's something that no one's mentioned yet, which is very interesting. No one's mentioned it. So I'll just ask the question, which is going to be a reveal. Does anyone remember that they're all wearing the red hats?
What?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, now if you look it up, it's like they got these little red hats on.
Okay.
I seriously don't. Yeah, I do not remember that.
I'm looking it up, Journeyers. Does anyone remember the red hats? I think we know the answer to that. I don't. Yeah. Really?
Really. And this is just a classic kind of a Mandela effect. This one, I think, did happen just recently. At least I've never heard. This is credit to Moneybag73, reporting it on the Rippin' Rabbit Common Sense radio show.
Oh, wait, I'm looking up the wrong thing here.
Keep talking. We're talking Easter Island. Yeah. Because to me, I think there would have been a memory of like what kind of hats are these? It would have been a clue to their culture, their civilization. What's the significance of the hat? Does it look Asian? Does it look, they would be analyzing it. Like, does this tell us about the people of Easter Island? I would have remembered a lot more detail. Like, oh, the sociologists and archaeologists would go into town.
I don't know if I can do this. That's probably not going to work. And if I knew this nice little platform a little better, I could put it on the screen. I don't see. Let me move it over.
But you can describe what you're seeing. They do look like hats now.
I see one that has what looks like a basket on their head, but
yeah, then people would say,
holy.
"That's what do you mean hat? That's a basket." You know, there'd be conversations about it.
Okay, so Enlightened Life is saying my sister-in-law had an Easter Island themed party in 2007, and the hats were stone colored.
Okay. So as usual, we may have people like, I remember the hats, but the color has changed, or the cats look different, or I don't remember any hats at all. For me, I don't remember any hats at all. So
Okay, fair enough.
yeah,
Lori just
but
texted me and said we can see it. Oh, I guess the image. Okay, Lori. Listen, we're about, oh my God, we're 35 minutes in, and I want to get to some questions. So speaking of Lori, you there, girlfriend?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm seeing the comments flying by in the chat, and okay, Catherine's saying no red hats. What are you getting, Lori? Do you have any questions that are coming in that we can pose to Cynthia?
I do, and I think the first one is from Elegant Pause. Love that name.
Hi, Elegant Pause. I love Elegant.
Why are we cognitively recognizing the shift? Are we consciously evolving?
good question. And this is I love that theory that we are consciously evolving, and it does tie in with what I've been tracking for 20 years. As I mentioned in my book, Reality Shifts, like, why is this happening? And I noticed because, we're created in the image of the creator, right? So, and the word creator tells you what the creator does and what we are. We are creators. So I think, yes, it's showing us that we're able to literally, as we envision it, move into realities of our own envisioning. And I think that we see that very clearly. And another talk at the conference was given by Eva Nye, and she does a channel of these mandanimals, which are animals that are very fanciful, and they seem like they're like, who's ever seen an animal like this? And she will say that they'll show up like in a Dr. Seuss book or something, and then you'll find out, no, this animal literally exists now. There is a zebra with those kind of stripes. There are trees that have rainbow bark, and these are the kind of things that a lot of Mandela Effect researchers are noticing, that these fictitious, fanciful things of the imagination are appearing in real life. And this is also what the Hopi said would happen. And it was forecast and predicted. And they're not the only ones, but the First Nations people around the world were saying that there will be a time that you'll see animals that never existed before. The Hopi definitely talked about it. And they have that verb-based view of the world. They know that we create, that we think things into being. So yes, we're becoming creators. It is an expansion of consciousness. This is our tool in our toolkit for humanity right now, this Mandela Effect, this creating together.
Here's a question I have. What about, we're talking about probably close to 8 billion people, maybe even north of that at this point on this planet. And relatively speaking, Cynthia, I would say a relative small fraction are in the camp that are understanding, recognizing, recognizing, I always like to say, and birthing into all of what we're talking about, becoming more consciously aware, etc. What about them? What about them in this that seem completely oblivious still, even in the midst of all that's going on? Because I feel now it's pretty potent, but there's still a lot.
It's very potent.
Very potent.
Well, I think of you as a lighthouse, and so I think I was saying it privately the other day. But I know that
private
people like you. No, but people know your show. They know that they're journeyers. Your show exists, and so literally, programs like yours are beacons of possibility. So people will find you or me or other light workers at the right time. And I do believe that I believe in that. I have faith in that. Because I know from experience with this Mandela Effect that if any of us, myself included, try to tell people this is real, I can convince you, I'll prove it, watch. It doesn't go that well. It really doesn't. Even when I first started this, before there was so-called the Mandela Effect proper, there was no, even Art Bell hadn't called it that yet. I was talking to people about reality shifts, and I would see people take 2 giant steps back away from me when I would ask, haven't you seen things appear, disappear, transform, and transport, and changes in the experience of time? I thought it was normal. But that's when I realized, no, people really don't want to hear this. They just want their regular everyday lives. And for,
That's
you
why
know,
this time is going to be so difficult, I think, for so many. You talk about the birth canal being excruciating. It's going to be to the 10th power for those types of individuals. Because let's face it, not everyone's going to find shows like ours, or maybe they don't want to. And that's, again, why I feel that perhaps this tumult that we're going through is that birth canal that is going to be as painful or not as your expectation or your awareness of what's happening. So let's take another
Absolutely.
question. I'm sorry, let's take another question. I'm looking at the clock and I know there are people that have questions. Don't worry.
This one is from Kathy Ashby. Her question is, how does Cynthia view or describe Project Looking Glass? Is it similar to this?
Oh, great question. Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, the Project Looking Glass is, I think I may have heard from some previous members of it that contacted me because what it was, I don't know that it's still happening, but at one point, it was a remote viewing of the future project, a hidden secret project in the US government using some kind of secret technology, which I do not have firsthand experience or awareness of. Having said that, I did hear from some people that told me that they had been part of a secret time travel research arm of the US government, but were no longer with that part of the government. And each of them separately, they didn't know, I don't know that they knew, they may have known each other, but I didn't pursue it. I didn't push back. I didn't chase these little tidbits. They write to me. I let them write to me. They said, each of them, you did not exist. We did not see you before. The whole thing is fascinating because I believe that the time travel arm, this investigative arm of the US government, probably did disband because of the chaos and the noise factor of this ninth wave starting around 2010, 2011, 2012, and now we're in the thick of it. So it's very difficult to see clearly what's going to happen next. Free will is here because we, the creators, are co-creating this new reality right now. It's very much what you're saying, Alexis, that it's a new birth. We're giving birth to the new version of human consciousness, collective consciousness together, and we're doing it together.
Yeah. Great question and good answer. Thank you so much. We'll maybe take a couple more. I've got to keep, now that I've got company on the live stream, and this very, very busy woman has got an appointment to get to. So we're not going to keep you too much longer, Cynthia, but this has been fantastic. What else do we have? Maybe two more questions, Lori.
Okay, so this one is from Meredith. She says, I find it interesting. I've noticed there are generational differences in the Mandela Effect. Have you noticed this as well?
Yeah, different. That's a good question. That there are different levels to it. Generational differences. It indicates the kinds of things that you see shifting are different. So, like those of us who remember things from a long time ago, like I remember Larry Hagman died and then he was alive again. But people, yeah, you remember that. And I write about it in my book, Reality Shifts. I think that was the first documented case of a person alive again, before Mandela even. But so there's that generational factor, but then there's another aspect to it, which I think is part of the question, which I love. Yes, the younger generations, the crystal kids, if you will, the new generations that are up and coming now, are much more at home and at ease with this Mandela effect. They take it as, well, of course this happens. They know what it is, and it's not dismissed quite so readily or stepped back from quite so much as people of like my generation and previous. So, Alexis, you and I are very much unusual for our generations, but we're the front runners. And right now there are people, the younger people now, they'll see different kinds of Mandela effects because they're looking at different things. They're watching TikTok. They're doing stuff I'm not doing, but they'll see changes in the areas that they're looking at. In the periphery of their awareness, they'll see things changing. The thing is, if you focus on something, you tend to lock it into place. So then you're not going to be, like, if you're a subject matter expert we talked about the kidney change. If you're a doctor, you're going to say, that's rubbish. I'm a doctor. I would have noticed. No, you wouldn't have noticed. You're a doctor. So the trouble is you're quantum xeno affecting something so that it doesn't change for you. That one thing is not changing, but you may notice other changes. So
Well,
I love that.
that's like the example of the Lion and the Lamb. I mean, my first inclination was go to clergy and say, but don't you remember when you said? I couldn't find anyone to do that, at least that I haven't seen in a long time. But that's immediately what you think, because the first thing you want to do is try to justify, okay, what's happening here? I know what I heard, and particularly if there are a whole bunch of other people that feel the same way, there is something going on. So yeah. Have you ever done a survey? I know you've done a ton of surveys, Cynthia, in the past on the entire spectrum of reality shifts and beyond. But in terms of that generational demarcation, sort of juxtaposing one age group with another, or generation with another, have you done that, or have you thought of doing that, or would you like to do that?
I'd love to do all kinds of research, which is why we started our 501c3 nonprofit for imec.world, which is our website, and that's why we're doing these conferences. We plan to build up reserves of funds and finances that we can then put into genuine research in these areas, because it's been a neglected area. It's been put down.
Sure.
And I was going to mention earlier that there's a scientist who's often mentioned when people say, oh, it's just a psychological effect. I already told you about Dr. Tony Jinks, and he said that there's no difference with the kind of possible psychological issues he investigated were things like transience, telescoping, areas of commission, which would include suggestibility, illusionary correlation, confirmation bias, perceptual blindness, which includes inattentional blindness, altered states of consciousness, hallucinations, autohypnosis, and coding errors like absent-mindedness, memory distortion, pre-existing beliefs, and loose association. And I also mentioned that's a magician that's having a monthly conversation with Evan Maitreya of Moneybags 73 channel. So these are people that are real memory experts, and the magician and Evan had the expert. They had Dr. Elizabeth Loftus come on the show with them live, and she herself remembered Mandela effects. Now that would not negate her very strong bias that humans have faulty memories. So when she herself does, and she remembers the Wizard of Oz, what does the witch say to the monkeys? And she remembered probably what you and I remember. Do you remember what the witch said when she's getting the monkeys to fly? She wants to go.
Oh, we're going to put. No, yes, I do, but it's not going to come to me. Ask the journeyers. Do you remember what I can see the scene? I see she's pointing and she's waving her. Yeah, but why don't you just tell us?
Fly, my pretties, fly is what many of us remember. That's not what that's never what she said, apparently. Even Elizabeth Loftus said, like, fly, my pretty. It's just something banal. I can't even remember it offhand, but it's like fly. Or it's just so lacking in the whole evil queen thing. It's like, fly, my pretties, fly, There's something to that now I can't even remember what it is now. See, I have problems sometimes, like whatever it is now, it's so wrong. So
yeah.
like,
Well, there's a great example, speaking of the film industry and movies that we know that are classics, and of course one of the most famous Mandela Effect ish things is Mirror, Mirror on the Wall with what's a Snow White, right?
Yeah,
and the contention is that no, it was never Mirror, Mirror, it's magic mirror on the wall. Okay, fine. Let's say that's the case. Why is it that a major, I don't know if I should be naming the advertiser, I think I shall not, but a major, let's just say, appliance company does a takeoff on that scene, and it has to do with, selfies, let's just say. And so this person is looking in the mirror and she goes, mirror, mirror on the wall, selfie, or something like that, or
right.
But my point is, a major agency, why would they have the script read mirror, mirror versus magic mirror if that wasn't the case? To me, that is very revelational. A major ad agency. And
absolutely,
before all this happened and I got wrapped up in other things, I thought, I'm going to track down that ad agency, find out who that was, and question them. I still might do that, actually, journeyers. I'll let you know. But yeah, so clearly there is a ubiquitous memory thing going on, where collective memory. It's not just a few people here and there.
No.
So.
And it's not. And sometimes people hear what it's supposed to be, and then they change over to that. And because I love this Mandela effect so much, I think that's part of why sometimes, like with this fly, my pretties fly, I can't even remember what it's supposed to be, because I'm kind of happy. Like, good, we do remember that, because I remember that. I've seen Wizard of Oz several times. Some people see it a lot, And like you said, Snow White, that's a huge movie.
Yeah.
And that's a very clear case of reality they call it reality residue. The people looking into, finding examples of this to prove like we're not the only ones that remember it this way.
Right.
So
Yeah.
excellent.
Really amazing. Amazing. My dear, you've got to go. I'm watching the clock for you. So we're going to wrap up unless there's any more questions or maybe one more question, Lori, that Cynthia could answer real quick.
Possibly, I can give her that, but I just wanted to let you know I was Googling furiously. So here it is. One of the most popular quotes from the movie is, "Fly, my pretties, fly," which the Wicked Witch of the West tells her winged monkeys. The truth is, she never said that. She says, "Fly, fly, fly." So, Cynthia, you were right.
And who would ever, I mean, that's not even quotable. Fly, fly, fly.
Fly, fly, fly. Yeah.
Right.
So,
and people were guessing in the chat that was it as well. So I don't think we have any questions that are short. So
I
maybe
see
we'll have
one.
to send those to Cynthia and we'll drop those in the comments because they're pretty complex.
Yeah, I'm looking at Kathy. Did the Philadelphia experiment really happen? Kathy, I will tell you that's a show in and of itself, my dear, and it might be one that we could literally do an episode on that. That's a highly contentious issue still to this day. I remember my parents reading the book and discussing it, and there are lots of pros and cons to the story, all equally valid. It's a whole nother subject area, but it does touch what we're talking about today. So,
but
Kathy,
the short answer is all these possible reality bubbles, they all can coexist. So it's possible that it does exist, but it also can be disproven. So it's kind of, we're getting into this area where reality is not what we thought it was. And that's
I call it the
Mandela
paradox.
Effect. Yeah.
The reality paradox. And
we are creators. And we can choose, are we creating with love? Or are we creating into this fear? Are we part of that drama triangle? And if we're pointing fingers like they did this to me, so I'm going to do that to them. If you get caught up in that, what are you really creating? So we're given an opportunity to take a look at this.
I love it.
It's a big question. Yeah.
Good question.
So that's why I like to ask, how good can it get?
It's how good can it get? And I think it's really all about asking the questions. Let's try to take our foot off the gas pedal of adopting something and being unrelenting about it and being humble and saying, I'm just going to keep asking questions. Investigate the mystery, I say. And Cynthia Sue Larson, you're one that does it so beautifully. Speaking of Cynthia and more chats, we're not going to do an after show today because we just went live. But if you haven't gone over to Patreon to see our whole, now we're a growing list of after shows. We did do an after show, Cynthia. The last show you were on, we went over to Patreon and we talked more about Mandela effects. And if I recall, it was a pretty neat conversation. So if you feel so inclined, go on over to patreon.com/higher journeys. The link is in the description below. We'd love to see you there. And also subscribe if you haven't. You see what kind of conversations we're having. And I am so pumped about this StreamYard. So there'll be more of this coming. So thank you, Cindy. Thank you so much. We're going to say ta-ta for now. And Journeyers, thank you. As always, I love you. And guess what? We'll see you. We're going to do another show this Friday coming up. We're going to be talking about, we're actually going to do a pickup on the conversation that we left off with having to do with encoded emotion. I'm also going to be talking about some of the things that Daryl Anka and I talked about relative to Bashar's forecast about all that's happening right now. So be sure to join us this Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. And before I have a complete meltdown, that was pretty good today. The light's heavy. It's still hot as can be. And it's been wonderful. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Cynthia Sue Larson. And we will
thank you so much. Yeah.
I love you much.
Love you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks again. Take care.